Good evening and welcome to the September 18, 2023 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask our Senator, Cheryl Kagan, to lead us in the pledge, if everyone can please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Next item on our agenda is reflection, and I'd like to call for a moment of silence, please. Thank you all very much. Next, we have appointments, and tonight we have a few different appointments and reappointment. Before us, what is the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the resolution confirming appointments and reappointments made by you to the Community Advisory Committee, a 2-year term for Andrew Messick, to the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee, a 2-year term for Chris Wallace, to the Economic and Business Development Committee, a 3-year term for Lynn Benzian, and to the Transportation Committee, a 2-year term for Morgan Lake, and a reappointment to the Senior Advisory Committee, 2-year term for Angela Davis.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that carries 4-0. Do we have anybody whose name we just called in the room? Okay, not seeing any of them. We will have to thank them when we see them. And I will remind everybody that joining the city committee is a wonderful, wonderful way to contribute to the business of the city. And there are committees for all kinds of different interests and expertise, so we hope you'll take a look on the city website and consider it. Next on our agenda, we have presentations, and we have a special presentation this evening from our Senator, Cheryl Kagan, on ranked choice voting. And welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, and thank you especially to our wonderful city manager and all staff. Before I start, I just really have to remember and honor the memory of Clyde Horton, who I know that we are all grieving, and so I just have to say his name. And ranked choice voting is something that I'm here briefly to pitch that Gaithersburg undertake a consideration, a study, a ballot measure. I'm not sure how you guys would do it, but today I want to offer a quick overview for you all, and most especially for residents of Gaithersburg who may be interested and may not be familiar with it. So ranked choice voting is a way of expressing preferences. Currently, in most elections, we pick candidate A or candidate B or candidate C, but we can't express our true preferences. So we may be fine with A or B. What we think C would be terrible. In most things in life, we do have the opportunity to express our preferences. And the examples that I give on the slide up here, and I tend not to read slides so people can read it themselves, but you're going to Thanksgiving and you're going to Grandma's, and you can't wait for Grandma's apple pie because it's just the best. That's your favorite. And then she didn't make apple pie this year. That's okay, because her pecan pie is also really good. And so you're ready for the pecan pie, but everybody else took the pecan pie. By the time you were in line, you didn't get any. So finally, you get your third choice, and yeah, pumpkin pie, kind of cliche, but that's what you get. We do that in everything we wear, what we drive, where we go on vacation, where we work, who we date, like anything. We're used to preferences. So this is offering that opportunity in our democracy. So here in Tacoma Park, there is, this is an example of what a ballot is. It's very intuitive, and ranked choice voting, or RCV, is used in states, in countries, and in municipalities around the world, around the country. So here are some of the examples of some of the places it's being used. Maine, New York City, Tacoma Park, the Oscars, all over the place. And Alaska just used it successfully. And Arlington, Virginia, just used it for their primaries this year. I should also mention that Rockville, Maryland, was going to have it on their ballot this year, but it was decided that with 4 ballot measures already on, that it was just sort of a lot to process, and so they didn't decide to pursue that this year. But you'll see Australia, Ireland, Scotland, I already mentioned Maine, Utah has it, the Oscars, and many other places. It is growing, and this is a list of some of the municipalities, some larger, most larger than Gaithersburg, and using it very successfully. So talking about how voters vote is really what's most important, because we need to make sure that voters feel informed and ready to cast a ballot. There's the behind-the-scenes part, which is how votes are tabulated. And that's the complicated part, and frankly, that's more in the weeds than most voters will have interest in knowing. But this gives you an idea, this chart, which is candidates still have to break the 50% threshold. And currently in our multi-candidate fields, a lot of times they don't. So for instance, 5 years ago now, for county executive, there were 6 candidates who ran, and the person who was elected had, a plurality, but not a majority. Same thing happened in our last election with 3 candidates, and again, not a majority. And so the majority of voters do not have their choice reflected. So if no one reaches the 50% threshold, then those who did not vote for whose candidate fell last would go to their second choice vote, and the numbers would be reallocated until one of the candidates breaks 50% and is elected. Do you have it nope, go back, nope, to the ice cream. There's a 60-second video.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, right there. No, do we not have the video? Okay, well, it was a 60-second video that was in the PowerPoint, but I guess it didn't translate
Yes, you can click on it.
in this, unless you can
Click on the ice
it.
cream cones.
Yeah, and then you have to allow it.
Okay.
But I don't know if we're gonna get sound.
Sorry, it did. I think we'll see.
Will we
Alright.
get ice cream
If you
though?
can make it, make it
Excellent
large.
question.
Can you, okay, start it over if you would, Tom.
Tech team, is there a way to get us sound on this or no?
No.
All right, well, that's a
All
quick
right.
answer. All right, well, I'm going to talk while it's playing because there is the visual that will be helpful. And it shows, it's also a way of making sure that women and people of color have a fair chance. There's also a history of candidates, as in Gaithersburg actually last time, Councilmember McNulty, Councilmember Henderson. You guys collaborated so beautifully with all of your opponents. That is really uncommon. A lot of times it's, I'm great and he sucks and, vote for me and don't vote for them. In ranked choice voting, everyone tends to collaborate because if I'm not going to be your first choice, I hope I'll be your second choice. And so then people play nicely, and that works out really well. And so you'll see in the ice cream, yeah, vanilla, not my favorite, but it so it shows that that's 40%, but that's not over 50. So strawberry gets dropped out. The votes for strawberry get reallocated. And look at that, chocolate wins first place, as intended. And that's the way it should be. So you'll see first, second, third, this works both for single candidate races like mayor in Gaithersburg, as well as multi-candidate races, as in for council. And it works well on both. The last couple of things, which is that the current system, the current state system, the ES&S voting system, can accommodate a ranked choice ballot. No cost, that's easy to do. It's done in other places. Thank you, Tom, appreciate it. And then the question of tabulating. I talked to the Tacoma Park city clerk, who has been there a long time, and she told me that they actually tabulate in 2 ways to make sure that there's a double check, which is really pretty impressive. One is a closed source, and the other is free, open source software. I've got two experts here, Jeremy Rose with Fair Vote and Michelle Whitaker, who is a longtime ranked choice voting expert. We did get some data from the National Council of State Legislatures, NCSL, that it's less than $1 per vote if there were new software that was needed. But the machines can handle it, and it is the wave of the future. It's democracy, and I would love if Gaithersburg would give it consideration. Happy to take questions, and I'm happy to defer to the experts. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, and thank you guys for being here as well. So the way it would work if we wanted to implement this in Gaithersburg would be, it would start with a recommendation from the Board of Supervisors of Elections, some of whom are watching this on Zoom, and I'll just put this out to the BOES members. If any of you have any questions right now, just use the Zoom raise hand function, and I'll call on you in a little bit.
Okay.
But I wanted to open it up to council members. Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Senator. It's great to see you, as
You too.
always.
Thank you.
I'm a little concerned that the pumpkin pie and vanilla ice cream lobbies might be after you after this. So I really have two questions. One, is this, I mean, I've heard about this for a number of years. Is this basically, it's an instant runoff, right? Instead of
Well said.
you're
That
trying
is
to
what
get
it's
it to
also called.
50%.
Mhm.
Okay. You did mention that it works when you have multiple openings. So in this situation, like this year, we have 3 open seats. I'm just curious how you get to a 50% threshold when people are able to vote for up to 3 in the election.
Yes. So Jeremy, do you want to come on up?
Sure, absolutely. So actually,
Jeremy Rose with Fair Vote.
we would be using something called proportional ranked choice voting, which at Fair Vote we consider actually the gold standard. It has even more benefits. And the way it works is for a three-way race, there is a 25% threshold, so you need a quarter of the vote. And so what that does is it makes sure all voices, all interests in the community are represented. We have good research that it advances partisan fairness, fairness across race and gender, and so it's a good way to represent all the different viewpoints in a community and make sure more voters are able to elect a candidate of choice.
When you say they have to get to 25%, so I guess I don't understand how that would happen. And if everybody votes for Lisa, and then we have a couple others who maybe only get up to 12%, you haven't achieved that threshold.
Right. So to go a little bit more into detail on how it works, and again, for the voters, it's simple. They're just ranking their preferences. If somebody has over 25% of the vote, you take the portion of the vote that's over 25% and look at how those voters ranked their ballots next. So what that's saying is, if we're a large block in the community, we're a coalition that all agrees on something, and we were able to elect more than one candidate, we're going to have our votes transfer. And then if you continue with that process, if there is no one's at 25%, you eliminate the last place candidate. So you're transferring the surplus and you're eliminating the last place candidate until you have 3 candidates that have won over 25%.
I would definitely welcome the BOSC's input on this and seeing how that math would work out.
And we have a nice video of it, just
Okay.
like that one, but specific to multi-candidate races.
Great, thank you, appreciate that.
Of course.
Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my question, I'm going to attach it to what Jim just said, I think. An exhaustive vote, which the term frightens me a bit, that there is a possibility that no candidate reaches the threshold. And that is, how does that occur?
I'm going to bring up Michelle Whitaker.
Hi, so glad to be with all of you. Michelle Whitaker. I've been a statewide ranked choice voting advocate and advisor on work on this across the state. And that's an excellent question in terms of just how do you handle exhausted ballots. And the main thing that I will say is,
Why don't you define what an exhausted
an
ballot is?
exhausted ballot is when someone has ranked as many choices and they have no further rankings that can be voted and tabulated in the race. And usually that happens when somebody ranks less than the number of candidates that are available in the race. So let's say you have 3 people running, and for your particular candidate, you're like, this is my candidate, I'm not voting for anybody else. Your ballot can be exhausted in that situation. The one thing I will just note is that we have exhausted ballots that can happen in today's race, today's elections that we run, especially if somebody is like, I'm not gonna vote for someone, or they vote for less than the number of candidates in a multi-winner race for like city council or for board of elections. So that same situation happens, but that's your vote. If you've chosen to do that, we honor your vote and we count it, and then when we're not able to count it any further, it doesn't go any further in the ballot. There's not more exhausted ballots in ranked choice voting elections unless you have people who are purposely just bullet voting in a large number. And the data, which Fair Vote has, really shows that we have about the same average in terms of both exhausted ballots, and when you're even looking at errors on ballots, we have a very low error rate. So in both situations, voters know what they're doing. There's lots of great instructions that happen, education that happens. Cities and local municipalities do a lot of education, both within the government structure, but also through community groups, to help everybody understand how do you get your vote counted in that race. So
Okay.
that's the biggest issue to handle.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Rob and then Neil.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Senator and Senator's helpers. for the
I don't
information.
pretend to be the national expert that these guys are.
So we've heard about ranked choice voting for a while, and notably like Maine and Oregon, or Washington State or Oregon, one of those out there. Have
Oregon,
done
you
it,
might be thinking of mail-in ballot, but Utah
Okay.
just started it. Yep. So it's
doing
blue
it
states, red
successfully
states.
on a very large scale, and it seems to work, and the detractors can't detract from it. But it is something that is perhaps not as well understood in the mainstream electorate. And so I was wondering if you have data on how many cycles it takes for folks to finally get it
Yep.
working. Is there a confusion factor that we have to deal with in implementing it? Things like that.
Thank you, Councilmember Wu. Good question. So I just learned from Fair Vote that it generally best practice is 6 months to 2 years, sort of one election cycle, to educate voters and let them be comfortable with it. But again, for the voter, it's intuitive. Only those of us who get into the weeds about exhausted ballots or multi-candidate races find it complicated. And there are some really good videos, tutorials, experts, and now as it's spread, it's kind of easier to get people to understand it. But there are outreach efforts. As I said, Arlington County just did it, and a lot of times after a first time, they will poll voters to get a satisfaction or a were you confused. Michelle just said almost no errors because it was very clear. Tom, if you wouldn't mind going back up to either the Tacoma Park or the ice cream. But it's really clear. It's like which one of these is your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice, and you just kind of fill out. And again, on our machines, it's not going to let people vote for first place 3 times. It would have to be, nope, not that one. No, back. There we go. Well, so that one works. But it says very clearly, first place, second place, third place, fourth place, and you cast your ballots on that way. The exhausted ballot, another example from the one Michelle was giving, a few years ago when we had, 33 candidates for county council, and people got to vote for 5. So another way that people's ballots could be exhausted is if none of their 5 choices made it to kind of the finish line, but their voice would be heard beyond, for a further time than it normally would, with just one shot and you're done.
I think you just preempted my second question.
Oh, sorry.
Which was, can I vote for myself 3 times?
Afraid not.
Neil.
So Adam Pagnucco wrote a column a couple of months ago about ranked choice voting where he did a pretty exhaustive analysis, as he likes to
As
do,
he does, yes.
of other races and other locales, where his conclusion was very few races changed, the results changed at very few races. I think it was 1 or 2% where the result would have been different if between the traditional way of voting and ranked choice voting. Is it worth the trouble?
It's a great question. So, yes, shout out to Adam Panuco, and if you don't read his stuff, you should, because he's really brilliant and very attentive to details. I'm going to say yes for several reasons. First, there's the voter satisfaction in knowing that their views are really taken into account. I love this candidate. She or he would be awesome. I also like this candidate. This candidate medium is different than voting for all three and having your vote count all the same, especially in a race where there are more candidates than there are winners. So if there are 5 people running for 3 slots, you get to sort of the equivalent of double voting or something. I really want this one to win. So voter satisfaction, 1. 2 is perception and reality, I think, of inclusion and fairness. What I talked about before about candidates being more respectful and working together more, because I'm going to be serving with these folks and I want to be someone's second choice if I'm not their first choice. They've shown that less money is needed, less special interest, because there's more collaboration, and as long as I get in the top 3, I'm going to win. It's not the one and done thing. I'm surely leaving out some of the other reasons.
But yeah.
Real quickly?
Yeah, sure. Right, so yeah, I would say even if, I think the number we saw is about 5% of the races, somebody who maybe started out in second place, when you look for majority winner, they actually do become the first place candidate and win the election. But I would say, to Senator Kagan's point, you see in almost all elections increased incentives for civility, for cooperation, for, if you see your opponent's yard sign in a voter's lawn, you still have a reason to knock on their door and talk to them. You don't just need to walk on by. And the last point I'd make is for city council elections, if you're using proportional ranked choice voting, then you do see different results where, depending on, you're representing the ideological, racial, ethnic diversity of a community. So that is a more transformational change.
All right, so I have one hand up on Zoom. Tech team, if you could bring up Tom Marchessault, that would be great.
Yay, Tom. Do we get to see him?
Tom, go right ahead. You got to unmute.
I need to unmute. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Senator.
Hey, Tom.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
And I guess first I want to say is I was born and grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is second on the list of having the most ordered voting. But I never did that actually until I moved to Maryland and was voting absentee when I was in graduate school. But my first conversation to you is whether do you think this is most important on the local level, the county level, or the state and / national level? It seems to me that I don't know how often this would happen, as I've seen in the last 10, 15 years at the local level.
It's a totally wonderful question. Thank you, Tom. So I would say yes and, but sometimes you can start with federal legislation or state legislation or county legislation. Sometimes things bubble up from the municipal level. And then once everybody sees it's working. When we banned styrofoam, Gaithersburg was at the forefront, and Rockville, and then Montgomery County, and blah, blah, blah. Finally, I was able to sponsor the bill to pass it statewide, but it was because of the leadership at the local level. And so RCV, ranked choice voting, once people see it, oh, it works. It's not complicated. Voters like it. And then that spreads. And so that's what's continuing to happen. There's a fear factor in it's new, we're not so sure. And sometimes candidates say, well, wait a minute, I was elected the old way. What if in the new way I'm defeated? I think we got to get over it. There's also the lower, longer implementation plan. So hopefully that would remove any concerns about you fine incumbents. But it's a great public service, and it's good for democracy at a time when our democracy is threatened by so many naysayers and challengers, conspiracy theorists.
And we look forward to having the written material in the video in the article that Neil was talking about, and we're not going to have it done by this November, but we will look into it.
That'd be great, Tom. Thank you. And I know that both Michelle Whitaker and Jeremy Rose and others are available to offer more technical assistance than I can possibly offer. But there's a lot of material online through Fair Vote and through other advocacy organizations that can answer questions.
Great.
Thank you.
And I don't see any more hands up. So Cheryl, thank you all very, very much for the presentation. And
Really appreciate your time, all of you. Thank you very much. Good luck. Have a good session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is public comments. This is the time the mayor and council like to hear from anybody who'd like to speak on any topic that's not a public hearing topic, and that's easy tonight because we have no public hearings. So any city-related issue, we ask that you state your name and address or neighborhood if you feel more comfortable that way. Keep your comments no more than 3 minutes. If you have more than 3 minutes worth of material to deliver, use your 3 minutes and send us the rest in writing. We'll consider it just the same as oral testimony. Is there anybody here who'd like to testify tonight about anything? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody in the room. Let me just check Zoom. If there's anybody on Zoom who would like to testify, use the Zoom raise hand feature and I'll call on you. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, but I do see Angela Davis on Zoom. I just want to say thanks because she's one of the people that we reappointed tonight. So thank you for serving, Angela. And all right, no public comments this evening. We're going to move on to from the mayor and city council. And tonight, Lisa, you're going to be going first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't be before you long. I just want to wish everyone a happy Hispanic month. I was going to say Viva Florencia, España. I hope I got that out right. I had the opportunity last weekend to spend the day with our wonderful mayor, and then I didn't see him anymore. I'm taking that. I'm just kidding. But one of the events we had the opportunity to see was at the Arts Barn. We saw Brian Gantz play, do a series of Chopin songs on the piano, on this beautiful grand piano. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And the Arts Barn there's still time to donate. They want to buy a grand piano. If that's the level of music that is coming, you want to get the Arts Barn a grand piano. So please check out the page because there's still opportunity to donate. And I'm going to read an announcement. Gaithersburg residents will cast their ballots for 3 city council members on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. There is no registration deadline as the city is offering same-day voter registration for the 2023 election. To confirm registration, please contact the Montgomery County Board of Elections at 240-777-VOTE. For complete election information, go to www.gaithersburgmd.gov/elections or contact Elections Clerk Lauren Klinger at 240-805-1087 or email cityelections@gaithersburgmd.gov.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll go to Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last weekend I was actually driving to and from Savannah, Georgia, getting CJ back to school, so unfortunately I missed a couple of events the past week. However, I was able to attend the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce Picnic with a Purpose, and they gave out their first annual awards for nonprofits, so congratulations to their 2023 large nonprofit, TLC, the Treatment and Learning Center, and the 2023 small nonprofit of the year, the Gaithersburg Beloved Community Initiative. Thank you to all of the nonprofits that were represented. They had a number of tables. I know a number of us were there as well. But I just want to amplify the importance of all of our nonprofit partners. They're such an important part of how we implement a lot of our community initiatives. So thank you to all of them. And it was just a fantastic day to be out at Smoky Glen Park for some barbecue. As you know, I'm fond of that. So it was great to be there. And it was funny, I realized pulling in that I had been there like 25 years prior when I first moved to the DC area. I was living in Virginia, and I thought I was out in the boonies. I had no idea where I was at my company picnic, and apparently it was there. So it's like, I remember that softball field. So it was pretty cool to be back there. And I just wanted to thank the trainers at Good Counsel High School. My son is on the JV team. I've heard you may have heard me say, and he was injured on a play last week in the JV game and received a concussion, and he's doing great. But I want to thank the trainers who took great care of him and been looking after him, and I want to thank the families of Mount St. Joe's who saw that it was our son and were offering their prayers, and just want to make sure that he was okay. So it was great sportsmanship in the stands, and I just really appreciate that. So I just wanted to comment on that publicly. So that's all from me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And
and I have an announcement.
yeah,
Gaithersburg residents will cast their ballots for 3 city council members on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. The city is conducting a hybrid election for 2023. All registered voters will receive a mail-in ballot application, which actually you should have gotten already. Applications can be returned via USPS or dropped off at City Hall or completed electronically. One vote center will be located at the Activity Center at Bower Park for the in-person voting. In addition, there will be 7 ballot drop boxes located throughout the city. The distribution of mail-in ballot applications began Friday, September 8th. Approved mail-in ballots will not be mailed to voters until Friday, October 6th. If anyone has any questions regarding the upcoming election, please contact Elections Clerk Lauren Klingler at 240-805-1087 or cityelections@gaithersburgmd.gov. For complete election information, go to www.gaithersburgmd.gov/elections. Now I'm done.
thanks, Jim. Neil.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So first of all, I want to wish again a Happy New Year, Lashana Tova, to those of us who celebrate Rosh Hashanah. I want to thank the congregation Shari Torah for the nice invitation to the Apples and Honey event the other day. I didn't actually get apples and honey, but I did have an apple donut, so it was close. Also, my good friend and neighbor Shelley Sharma has had a health issue recently, and I want to wish him well for that. But we also had a very nice birthday celebration for him with a good turnout from the neighborhood. So shout out to Shelley. Also attended the Chamber Picnic. It was a nice event at Smoky Glen. I think my first visit to Smoky Glen was over 30 years ago, because I worked for GE and they used to do their annual picnic there. I think Lisa was there around the same time. And so it's always nice to be there, and the chamber did a bang-up job. It was super crowded. It was really hard to find a good place to park, which is unusual because it's a big facility. Attended the open house for candidates and got a briefing that kind of reiterated a few things that I've heard before, but it was good to see some of the candidates who are participating in the election. And had a briefing on some of the plans for Lake Forest, which are moving along nicely, and I hope to hear more in the coming months. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. We'll go to Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've been to Smoky Glen before with Wright Allegheny, which Jim will do next year, and he'll attend that barbecue. He just doesn't know it yet. But yeah, I mean, the GGCC event was very nice. I mean, I liked what they did in incorporating kind of that service element to, and the barbecue and the bar. It was all good. Yeah, it's a good mix. I also attended the event at Shari Torah. Happy Rosh Hashanah to those who celebrate. That was a great event. I did not know that mead was part of the celebration, and I did celebrate. And I think that's it. Oh, here's my picture of me stalking Neil. You can't show that to the public. That's about all I've got,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Rob. Interesting updates from everybody. I want to also echo the congratulations to the Chamber for a terrific event at Smoky Glen. It's always fun to be there. And I want to echo Neil and wishing everyone who observes very happy Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur is coming up as well. Next, so we will not, speaking of Yom Kippur, we will not have a work session next Monday, September 25th. The next regular session of the Mayor and Council will be on Monday, October 2nd. And as I hand it over to Tanisha from the city manager, I do want to acknowledge something that's on all of our minds up here, which are a series of arson events that happened over the weekend, mostly along in the 355 Old Town area. And Tanisha was going to provide a very brief overview, or it doesn't have to be brief. It could be as long as you want. I don't need to step on your toes there, but
Well, we did talk about a special game tonight, so I'm going to keep it brief.
okay.
I appreciate the opportunity to update the mayor and council and the community. As you mentioned, Mayor, there were several fires set and burglaries attempted at multiple businesses, including our own Gaithersburg Police Station, early Sunday morning. The suspect was quickly apprehended Sunday morning and by the Gaithersburg Police Department, so we want to thank them for their quick work. The suspect has been charged with the burglaries and arsons. In total, 5 businesses are closed as a result of the fire, smoke, water damage that they sustained, and are working with our staff to expedite their rebuilding process. So we hope to have them back open very soon. Two additional impacted businesses will reopen very shortly. We just needed to wait for water to be restored to their businesses. So they can't have any public access right now, but as soon as water is restored, they will reopen. The police station itself suffered minor damage and is open and operational. And I just want to thank again the great quick work by the Gaithersburg Police Department team that apprehended the suspect rather immediately, and the assistance and the quick work from the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue team that worked to make sure the charges were applied quickly.
Can I just, this is probably something you cannot answer because an investigation is ongoing. I know I've had a number of inquiries about the motive of this person. I don't even know if it's a man or woman. I don't know who it is, but because a number of the businesses were Latino owned, the immediate speculation among some people was that maybe there was some sort of motivation there. I haven't seen anything. I mean, the investigation's going on, so I don't know, and I'm assuming you don't have any information on motive.
We don't have any evidence to support that at this time. As you mentioned, it is an active investigation. I will say that the public should be aware that the suspect was apprehended on foot. All of the businesses are located within very close proximity of each other, including the Gaithersburg Police Department,
Right.
which is not a minority-owned business.
No.
So I think there is no evidence to support that. We do understand the concern there, but it appears to be convenience, sort of ease of access given the suspect's mode of transportation. But it's an active investigation, so
Sure.
we will await the information.
Sure, thank you for that. Did you have anything else in front of the city manager?
That will conclude my report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to economic development update. Tom Lonergan Seeger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everybody. Just one item for you tonight. Created with the small business owner in mind, Maryland Video Lottery Terminal, we'll call it VLT. That fund uses proceeds from video lottery terminals or slot machines to assist small minority and women-owned businesses. At least half of those VLT funds must go to eligible businesses within targeted areas around the state's 6 casinos. The other 50%, that funding can be deployed throughout Maryland, meaning here. As with any funding program, it's the details that matter, and the VLT program isn't new. Funding did begin in 2011 when the first VLT facility began gaming operations. Businesses must apply via fund managers, and until recently, none of the 8 established fund managers were here in Montgomery County. Most are actually within economic development offices which promote the VLT within their own areas. If a Gaithersburg business had an interest in applying, then they need to work with another county manager such as Howard or Anne Arundel County Economic Development. But that has now changed. Montgomery County's Economic Development Corporation is now a fund manager and has partnered with the Latino Economic Development Center. Called the Accelerating Accelerating Community Excellence, or ACE Loan Fund. The program offers loans from $5,000 to $250,000. The program does not require a minimum credit score or minimum number of years in business, and it is available to a wide range of business types. Loans can be used for any general business purpose, but not to refinance or pay delinquent taxes. Interest rates are based on the risk associated with each applicant. The duration of terms range from 6 months to 10 years. For more information on ACE, you can go to the Latino Economic Development Corp website or give us a call. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'm going to invite Jasmine Forbes up to lead us through a courtesy review.
Good evening. So staff's before you to present a courtesy review on application ASDP-9629-2023 and seeking guidance on how to proceed with this application. As shown on the screen, the amendment to the schematic development plan is for the properties located at 103 and 203 Spectrum Avenue. The applicant's requesting to amend the property lines to the south and east. This redrawing of the boundary will enable the project to meet building code setbacks required without the need of a waiver. On November 7th, 2022, the Mayor City Council approved schematic development plan SDP-9269-2022 for a 230-unit multifamily residential building on 2 undeveloped lots. As part of this application, the preliminary subdivision plan was submitted. The applicant plans to combine 2 lots into one to be able to construct this building. And as you can see on the screen, the red line shown was the previously approved property line that was part of the SDP application, and the applicant is proposing this blue line. Section 24-198C states that for amendments involving a change in use or changes other than to a use, staff shall present the application to council as a courtesy review. It further states, following a courtesy review presentation by staff, the council shall either deem that the application has a minor effect and thereby direct the planning commission to make a final decision, or the council may direct that the amendment be referred to the planning commission for further evaluation, public hearing, and recommendation. The council shall thereafter approve or disapprove the recommendation of the planning commission. In conclusion, staff recommends that the council find this application to have a minor effect and direct the planning commission to hold the public hearing and make a final decision on this amendment. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have this evening.
Thank you, Jasmine. Rarely have I seen something with a more minor effect than this, but go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, it seems very minor. The one question I have is there's no scale on the map. How far are we moving the boundaries? Is it a few feet or?
I would say about a couple, 5 to 10 feet.
5 to 10 feet in
Yeah.
a property this size? It's
Yeah, they
pretty-
need more additional property line setback to meet the building codes for the
No, I
building.
understand. Yeah,
The building footprint's not going to change, but it's just the property lines being shifted.
okay. Seems pretty minor to me.
Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and this is just for my own edification. I had trouble comprehending what's going on here. Are they ceding, is one property owner ceding property to another property
It's
owner?
the same property.
It's the same
owner.
So it's just literally moving the line. They
One
own
is
all
one
of it.
LLC, the other's another LLC. They're owned by
Okay.
the same people.
Okay, that was what I was scratching my head over the entire time. That's all I got.
You want to,
I'll move, do you have
questions?
I have one question, Mr. Mayor. Just with, and maybe this is a Lynn question because there's a forest conservation easement. We end up reducing the overall protected, even though it's really just moving a property line. Is there any requirements that we have to do, or is this something that the planning commission would handle because we, I guess, theoretically are reducing the size of that conservation space?
Yeah, that would be part of the planning commission's review and approval.
Okay.
Yeah. But I do want to note that this shows the previous forest conservation easement. The SDP that was approved by council last year showed the removal of some of that forest con easement.
Okay. Even better.
any other questions? All right, would somebody like to move that we deem the application has a minor effect and thereby direct the planning commission to make a final decision?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Carries 4-0. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Okay, next, ordinances, resolutions, and regulations. Let's see who we... This is, Jasmine, this is you again. Yeah.
I've had some time. Hello again. So staff's before you with the resolution for a temporary use application, U-9627-2023. As shown on the screen, the subject property is located at 16383 Shady Grove Road. The applicant, CarMax, is requesting temporary use of the existing lot adjacent to the dealership to store vehicles. Due to demand, more vehicle inventory space is needed for CarMax. So this slide shows the approved amendment sketch and schematic plan that was approved in 2013. This sketch approved the automobile sales center, and the area that's part of the application blue was shown for a future commercial office building. So this plan currently plans to use that current parking lot to store the vehicles, and it also includes a 6-foot chain link fence, a K-rail barrier, and a temporary gate around the parking lot. So pursuant to section 23-178G1, the Mayor City Council, upon review and recommendation from the Planning Commission made by resolution, establish or grant temporary use. On August 2nd, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the temporary use. The temporary use approval is only granted for a period of 1 year. If that expires, then the applicant has to come back and reapply for a whole new temporary use permit application. In conclusion, staff is supportive of temporary use application and recommends approval of the resolution. Draft resolution for U-9627-2023 has been included in the meeting packet and is ready by a separate motion for final action should the council so choose. And tonight I also have the project team here to answer any questions you may have this evening.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments? Rob?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to Jasmine. So I know, so it's a temporary use?
Yes.
For annual renewals. Is that the duration of the expected use here, or does the applicant intend, is there a longer term contemplation for this use on this parcel?
Well, right now, all we can get is a year. I mean, I think we have to come before you every year to.
Aaron, you want to just state?
Oh,
say
I'm
your
sorry,
name?
you're right. Aaron Gerard with Miles and Stockbridge on behalf of CarMax, and we have CarMax representatives here as well. But yeah, right now, there's a severe space shortage on the site, so we're taking it year by year is all I can tell you. I don't know, how long. Certainly, like Jasmine noted, it's approved for office. There's not much of an office market right now, and that parking lot is just sitting there. So I think it's a logical temporary use until such time as something else makes sense here.
Okay, I mean, is the cause a surge, or is the cause more systemic that's going to therefore drive temporary surge versus?
I mean, I
systemic?
think it's been a pretty successful dealership. So the need has been growing to the point where now, it's a space shortage, and they're looking across the fence and they're like, there's a parking lot right here. I mean, just to be honest. So, how long that lasts, I don't know. I can't speak to that.
Okay.
But how often would it come before? Would it come back before us?
Every
for
year.
renewal.
Yeah, so if this application does get approved, it expires September 18th of 2024. And if they need to come back and extend that, then they'll submit a new application and it'll be before the council.
If eventually they wanted to make a permanent change, they would have to come to amend the site plan? Is that how that would work?
They're going to have to amend the sketch and the schematic development plan to make that as a permanent parking lot for CarMax.
And I assume that the periodic review is staff going and reviewing, and it's not going to come up back to us more frequently than once per year. Is that accurate?
Say that again?
So the scope of the review says it's for approval up to 1 year, and then during that time, there shall be subject to periodic reviews to ensure compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So I read that to mean that more frequently than once per year, there's going to have to be periodic reviews. But I assume that somebody from staff just going to the parking lot to make sure everything's kosher
Yep.
and not that it has to come to us, okay?
Yep.
Yep.
And we make sure also by that date, they have to remove the car. Cars have to be
Unless they
gone.
come back
But
for.
if they think they need a longer time, then they'll come probably before, the expiration.
Yeah.
Okay, Lisa.
Jasmine, thank you. Is there a limit on the number of times that it can be extended?
No, as long as council keeps approving it. There's no limit of how many temporary use application permits can be.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
I just want to kind of follow up on the why don't we just do an updated SDP? If this is something, if the business is being successful, it makes sense, at least for this go-around, for the temporary, but I think it feels like with Rob's questioning and with Lisa as well, that it would make sense if this is as successful as it sounds, then perhaps the next step after this year would be to start that process to amend the site plan so that it can be a permanent thing.
Unless the commercial office market turns around.
Exactly. Yes.
Food for thought, I guess.
It is.
Would someone like to move Neil, go ahead.
Well, this application constitutes about 50 pages in the packet, and I can't find, who owns the empty lot?
CarMax does.
Oh, so CarMax owns the whole thing?
Yes.
All right, what do we need 50 pages for? All right, I'd like to move the resolution.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, Sean Stevens. We're going to talk about one self-contained debris collector. Which I've never heard a vehicle referred to as that. So, is this like what,
Just
like
to
a
clear it
street
up,
sweeper?
it's a self-contained trailer that we use for leaves, but it's got the leaf vacuum built
I
into the
see.
trailer so we can tow it behind any truck.
I see. Got it.
So, sorry for the confusion. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The resolution I bring before you tonight is to authorize the city manager to negotiate and enter into a contract for one self-contained debris collector. Unit 6654, a 2011 ODB self-contained debris collector, was scheduled for replacement in FY24 due to its age, condition, and reliability. Staff wishes to utilize Sourcewell contract 031121-ODB to purchase this replacement equipment. Maryland Industrial Trucks Incorporated is an authorized ODB dealer and has provided the city a quote in the amount of $115,635. Staff recommends entering into a contract with Maryland Industrial Trucks Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $115,635 for the ODB self-contained debris collector. There are sufficient funds in the asset replacement fund. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Sean. Questions, comments? What are we going to do with the old one?
Sell it on GovDeal.
Okay. All right. Would someone like to move the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Carries 4-0. And Sean, you are back again.
Okay, this resolution I bring before you tonight is to authorize the city manager to enter and negotiate into a contract for the purchase of two 64-passenger conventional school buses. Unit numbers 3875, a 2006 Thomas bus, and Unit 3876, a 2008 Thomas bus, were scheduled for replacement in FY24 due to their age, condition, and reliability. Staff wishes to utilize Anne Arundel County Public Schools Contract 23CM-136 with American Truck and Bus Incorporated for the purchase of these two replacement buses. Staff recommends entering into a contract with American Truck and Bus Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $354,412 for the purchase of two 64-passenger conventional school buses. There are sufficient funds in the asset replacement fund. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions, comments? Just to clarify, the number is $345,412.
Yes.
Not necessarily a question, Mayor. Well, two comments. Is Anne Arundel County Public Schools better negotiators for contracts than Montgomery County Public Schools?
Montgomery County's contract is outside of our procurement it's an older contract that they've extended, but it doesn't meet our current procurement policy because of the age of the contract.
Okay, and just the other comment was, perhaps a little bit more information as to how we got to selecting the any given contract vehicle, I think would be a little more helpful.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, if no one has any more questions, would someone like to move the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, carries 4-0. Kevin Edders. Thank you, Sean. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The resolution I bring before you tonight is to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract for the refurbishment of the basketball court at Duval Park. Duval Park is located at the end of Holly Drive. The amenities include a full-size basketball court, which is in need of refurbishment. The condition of the basketball court has declined tremendously. There are many small and large cracks and low spots in the asphalt. Tree roots around the court are contributing to the large cracks and extend about halfway into the court in some areas. ATC Corp has extended pricing under NCPA contract number 08-18. The cost for refurbishment includes a complete replacement of the subbase material. The actual cost may be less depending on the condition of the subbase material at the time of demolition. Staff believes the pricing extended under the NCPA contract is the best value to the city, and staff recommends award to ATC Corp in the amount of $153,145. Funding is available, and do you have any questions?
Rob.
Yeah, I mean, just the same comment as before. Like in the last one, we're using Anne Arundel contract as kind of an exception to going out and competing in, so you don't have to go out and get the competition price. I understand that. Here, there's I'd like to see a little bit more in the packet about how the staff did their market research to make the determination that, in this case where we didn't receive more than one bid, how are we making it the determination this is the best pricing or fair and reasonable or whatever the case may be.
Okay, a little more background. We did solicit this project in 2021 and 2022, but due to lack of interest and high prices, fluctuating prices, we did not obtain a reasonable responsive proposal. So we decided to look for extended pricing under a contract that was already out there.
And if I may, Mayor, I would just add that we do consider when we write other contracts that they are competitively bid. So there has been competition, we just didn't have to run it. So there's some administrative efficiencies on our part, but we also put rules around what kind of contracts we can use. So as you heard from Mr. Stevens before, we weren't able to use the Montgomery County contract because it had been bid too long ago.
Yeah.
Right, so there are certain criteria that still needs to be met in order to ride a contract that's been competitively bid elsewhere.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just a little bit more explanation, because I know we had a history, back in probably my first and second term, or first term and before Tony left, that they were using a lot of exceptions to the procurement policy. And so, which is fine, to obtain efficiencies, but just a little bit more information as to how we got there.
Sure, we're happy to share that with
Okay.
you, and we do not consider this an exception.
Okay.
And staff knows that it's very difficult to get a waiver from the city manager's office these days. So.
Lisa.
Thank you. Kevin, with the tree roots, are we going to be in this situation again?
No, we'll cut the tree roots around where around the outside of the court, and then they'll remove all that material from the subbase and repair it so they won't grow back into the court.
Okay.
Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is more for the benefit of the community. Assuming we approve this, how long before this project might be able to move forward? How long would the court be closed, and how quickly do you think the project can be completed?
right? This time of year, it depends on weather. I mean, if they can get it done before, weather conditions, prohibit asphalt to be there, it would happen in the spring. And, probably 3 months maybe. By the time they do the replacement, then the asphalt, let the asphalt cure and then paint the lines and everything.
Okay, thank you.
All right, would someone like to move the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, carries 4-0. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Frank Johnson. We're going to talk about our authority to engage in a DRRA.
Yes, actually, you've got my introduction. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Excuse me. This is a suggested introduction of a new proposed Chapter 2A, which would be the Development Rights and Responsibilities Agreement Authority, otherwise known as the DRRA. The authority is provided by state law, by the state land use article, and it's being proposed after being raised in actually several discussions with developers, most particularly Lake Forest Mall. What does it offer? Primarily a measure of more certainty, but in exchange the opportunity to gain more public benefits. The more certainty for developers, the agreement itself does have to outline certain standards. What are the permissible uses, density, maximum height and size of the structure, permits that are required or approved. It also does apply applicable law as of the time the agreement signed or as specified in the agreement. There are some exceptions as to how that can be changed, particularly if it's in the public interest. But with Maryland being a late vesting state generally, that also provides a measure of certainty for developers, and the exchange is that it provides for additional public benefits to the city. It's somewhat similar, could be described in a similar way as an annexation agreement, where in exchange for certain certainties in that regard, again, the city can gain some additional public, often recreational facilities, school sites, or what have you. The proposal itself follows state law and similar provisions for Rockville and Frederick. There were a few additions in going through discussions here among multiple parties, here among the staff, to add in some extra explanation of public benefits, but also your authority to simply say, we're not interested is the first step. The overall point is to enhance development flexibility, innovation and quality, while protecting the public interest and again giving that opportunity for public benefit. This is only authority. This isn't entering any agreement. In fact, there is a fairly detailed process that's laid out. It begins with the petition. The applicant's petition has to include a number of very specific standards outlining the property, what are the details, which I've already mentioned, such as permits required, already approved, what are the enhanced public benefits. The first step is your decision whether to accept it or not. You don't have to. If you do, then it does go to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation. They have to determine, is it consistent with the master plan, and what is there an enhanced public benefit. If they find that, the third step is it comes back. Before entering the agreement, may negotiate, may amend it, but before adopting it, there has to be notice and a public hearing, and then after that, can certainly enter the agreement by resolution or at that time amend it. It can be terminated, of course, by mutual consent, but also unilaterally if after a public hearing there's a finding that suspension or termination is necessary to protect public health or safety. So that's built in. That's also the case for applicable law. Let's say a legal change is needed to protect public health or safety, and while the agreement may specify, or as of the signing of the agreement, certain laws would apply, that can also be amended if essential for public health or safety. Tonight's request is simply an introduction, and the projected public hearing then would be October 16th by staff suggestion, if you wish to introduce. And I can certainly answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Frank. Rob Wu.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Frank. Just two questions. One is the different capacities that we operate up here is legislative versus quasi-judicial, and typically land use is in the quasi-judicial category. So I just wanted to make sure that by enacting an ordinance that would allow us to enter into these agreements, it's not going to be subject to the same standards of review that our quasi-judicial role would be. Meaning, if we said, no, we're not going to enter into one of these DRAs, they can then go to the circuit court and, we'd have to justify our actions based on substantial evidence or whatever the case may be, that this is clearly within our legislative authority.
Yes, the statute outlined, that is the state law provision outlines that it's your choice. And yes, that would be within your legislative authority. That's not to say somebody couldn't appeal, but in addition, there are no standards for saying, under these standards, the city council must accept.
Okay.
There are standards if you do that, in other words, the planning commission, it does have to meet certain standards to go through for approval, but not at the initial stage.
Okay.
You can simply decide to reject because you don't want it.
So assuming we enter into a DRA, is it then appealable under the quasi-judicial, or is it appealable like for breach of contract, essentially? If we were to breach the terms of the agreement, or allegedly, I know we would never breach it, but if they were to allege it, would it be under our quasi-judicial, or would it be under our, essentially they're suing us for breaching an agreement we entered into?
Lynn?
Yeah, it would be under a breach of contract type of, it's not an administrative appeal.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Final question, sorry, the unilateral right kind of shocked. It was kind of interesting to me. You don't usually see those in a contractual agreement. Do we open ourselves to damages if we make a determination that we're going to exercise a unilateral right for health and safety or whatever the standard may be?
I would say that's always a risk, but the state law does allow that and does specify the findings that you would have to specify that there is a health, safety, or public safety risk that essentially requires, and the two things would be suspension or termination or applying a new law that has come in. That's a fairly tough standard.
Okay.
But, as Lynn was pointing out, this is adopting the power to adopt an agreement, so the enforcement of that would be
Under the agreement, so we could have limitation of liability provisions in the agreement itself,
Right.
and, okay, perfect, thank you.
Jim?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Frank. I only have one question, and it's, in general, do these agreements expire with the completion of a project, or do they live, 20 years, 50 years down the line? And the reason I ask is, say an applicant wants to make a change, are we then tied to the agreement from 20 years ago if, a new master plan has been passed, new zoning, etc.? I'm just curious what that does to tie us in to a moment in time.
State law and our proposal, following state law, say 5 years if it's not specified. That can be changed in the terms of the agreement, but the general default is 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Also by mutual agreement. You can change by mutual agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could always amend the agreement if both parties agree to it.
Yeah. Okay, so this is just an introduction.
Mm-hmm.
So would someone like to move that we introduce?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Policy discussion. Rob Robinson, thank you for your patience.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. Well, it's been a while. This is the policy discussion for Master Plan Amendment MP 123, the housing element. The housing element joint public hearing was held June 5th, 2023. where in part staff presented recommended changes to the plan resulting from the comments received. After the public hearing, staff revised the document as such and further added some additional edits that came at the direction of the Planning Commission and the Mayor and Council during the public hearing. The revised document was released to the public for review and comment on June 29th. Pardon me. A complete list of the changes to the document are listed as Exhibit 20. The document itself is Exhibit 19. And the Planning Commission record closed July 21st. The Planning Commission gave a recommendation, approved the document and gave a recommendation of adoption during their August 2nd, 2023 meeting. And I'm here before you this evening with a draft resolution of adoption, recommending Exhibit 19 be adopted as the Planning Commission recommended. I would like to note that per the land use article, any changes proposed by the council tonight will restart the public hearing process. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That is one heck of a caveat.
It is, and at this point, I think this is the 6th time before you, so I think you folks could probably present the housing element at this stage.
Before I go to Neil, I want to thank you and staff for all your work on this. It's an amazing document. It really is. It is substantive. It is, if anybody who reads that will learn so much about the city of Gaithersburg and what makes us Gaithersburg. And so I want to congratulate you. Not that this has been approved yet. Perhaps it will be, but I want to pre-congratulate you. Neil, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. We've been enjoying this housing element discussion so much, we might want to continue it. No, I don't really have anything of substance. I'd like to reiterate what the mayor's just said. It's an amazing document. It really is something. I'm a little curious. I mean, in the 300-page section that covers this topic, it looks like the entire document is in there twice. Was that really necessary?
What we did was, as I mentioned, so Exhibit 19 is the clean version showing the edits. The other version, because in the past the council has said, the public may want to actually see the strike and bold version. So the other version of the document, outside of Exhibit 1, which was the original one, is a really long read and really difficult reading because it's all the strike and bold and inserts, so it reflects all the changes.
All right. I just thought you wanted to give us extra homework.
No.
All right. Is there something to move or?
There will be, but Rob, do you have a question or?
Yeah, well, no questions and no amendments or anything like that. Just two comments and one accolade. I'll start with the accolade. Great job. This is a masterful document. Reading through it, it really gives you the complete picture of the city where it's been, which is great, but also where it's going. And so, question I have is, or comment. One, I would have liked to have seen more context for where we sit within the greater county, the document. And I don't even know if that's supposed to be there because it is the housing element for the city. But when I was reading through it, the one thing that stood out to me was, okay, so what does this mean for, us in relation to them, us in relation to the greater county? And so I'm not sure how we present that information perhaps to the public. I don't know. The other would be, where do we go from here? Because there were some great recommendations of what is next. And there are a lot of recommendations for what is next. And so how do we, as an adjudicative body, now take the next steps from this document and springboard into the great recommendations that are in there?
Just a quick follow-up. As the council may remember, at the back is the implementation matrix, so all the recommendations there and in the time frames. And we discussed, I believe, Councilmember Harris at the public hearing said, you have a lot of stuff here. Are you guys going to be able to do it? Well, we've committed between our various divisions. So it's not just a planning effort, it's a housing effort, it's economic development, it's policy guidance, direction from the city manager's office. So I think it's doable, especially when the lifespan of a master plan is 10 years. I think, this is why we sort of broke it out. To your earlier comment about the county, we did add the footnote. We brought up the county's, housing policy goals and where we fit within that. And actually from a ratio of housing, we actually are outperforming the county in providing housing as we went there. So That, and we also acknowledge that as a percentage, we have a higher amount of market rate and regulated affordable housing than the county does. So where we fit in, the county should be following us. We shouldn't necessarily be following the county.
Well, but yeah, I mean, so we voted that in 2019 at COG, and that was a whole bigger discussion in the context of the greater region. And yeah, and I said at that time, and it's evident now, we're pulling more than our fair share. But it's also interesting to see kind of the development of the city's housing stock over time, and the proportions and the ratios drastically different than the county. And I'm, as a policy person, I'm trying to think of, what does that mean for us and what we need to do? Because we have a higher proportion than the county, for example, in multifamily housing. A big criticism of the county, for example, is that a lot of it, except for when you go very far down into the Beltway, is single-family housing, and they have been underperforming for decades in housing stock that is needed for to support the growth in the county. And it's not just in Montgomery County, other areas as well. But how do we fit into that mix if we are pulling a heavier weight? We are thinking, we are saturated as far as land use. We no longer have greenfields. We have redevelopments. The criticism, again, towards the entire region is we're not pulling our weight, but it's evident that we are. And so, does the city therefore take a step back? Does the city therefore, start pointing out to folks like, we're a little bit different than the land uses that are around us, so don't group us in with them. But I'm not sure how you put that, because again, this is a land use element that's focused on us, but it's a broader context.
Just one quick follow-up with that. So going all the way back, we had discussed we wanted to do housing first before we went into land use, because we wanted these policies and this data in place. So as we move forward over the next coming years to complete our land use element, these studies are going to be discussed. We shared our housing element, our draft, with Montgomery Planning. So we've been in contact with them as they're redoing their GSSC master plan. So they're using the data and understanding the policies we have as they begin formulating land use recommendations on our immediate borders. So we are looking at it somewhat from a regional context. It's hard to compare with Montgomery County because of the size, the breadth, and the scope. From the Ag Reserve to Bethesda, it's really not apples and oranges with us. So oftentimes, we sort of look at how do we compare with Rockville, which is very different because Rockville is the opposite of us, where we're 50% multifamily, they're 50% single-family detached. So we do have a unique situation. But Councilmember Wu, to your point, we are considering all this. And again, this is why we wanted to get this in place for land use, because now that we are entering really a redevelopment or infill phase, what best serves the needs? By having this data, by understanding the policies, we can make a recommendation now that we didn't make in 2009 about, trying to advocate for gap housing. That wasn't there. So a lot of positives have come out of this in how we fit in this immediate sub-region and how we will grow as a city itself.
Yeah. Interesting conversation. Thank you.
All right, Neil.
Yeah, I just wanted, following up on Councilmember Wu's comment, it just reminds me of the exercise that we started before COVID hit of the visioning exercise, which was intended to put our city within some broader context as well. So maybe we can revisit that at some point.
Actually, all the data was updated to create this document.
Good. And I am somewhat concerned that we're sharing too much data with the county and giving away our secrets, but it's the way it is when you're a public organization. So,
Jim?
Go ahead,
Lisa, did you have a question?
Not a question, a comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jim, and then, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say kudos. This document is excellent. It's consumable at various levels. The graphics are fantastic. The definitions are plain language. Thank you to you and the staff for putting this amazing document together. I grew up with the term, and I'm sure many know it, when supply is low, opportunity is low, I'm going to take care of my four and no more. But this document is beyond that. It's not just, I don't see it as the four corners of Gaithersburg. It talks about the Galp loan and folks outside of of the city who can obtain it. You give information about state loans, about federal loans. Fantastic. So thank to staff and everyone, and Rob for putting together this excellent document.
Thank you. And real fast, I would like to acknowledge our former housing director, David Christeel, who is now in India,
Absolutely.
but his work with us on
Absolutely.
creating this document.
No doubt he's staying up till whatever time it is in India to watch this. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll ditto what Council Vice President Henderson said. Rob and staff, team, everybody, tremendous work. Not just the accumulation of the data, but the data visualizations to make it digestible, to make it easy to find the information that you need. I particularly appreciate the matrix. I particularly appreciate the early warning systems that are recommended in trying to identify where some of our naturally occurring affordable housing is, and trying to get out in front of any kind of decay or distress, and trying to make sure that we're keeping what we have, and then trying to figure out how we get more. So with all of the recommendations, all of the thought, all the input that came from the public, all the times you came here to have those discussions, and honestly, and the way that you presented it to us to make it digestible for us to understand what you were asking, to get the guidance, to then go back and make the changes. Just the whole process really, I thought, was really well executed, well done, and I'm excited to be at this point that we are tonight.
Great. Would someone like to move the resolution to approve MP 123, the City Gaithersburg housing element?
Well, does that mean we don't get to talk about this anymore?
So
Okay.
moved.
And I will second that.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Carries 4-0. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Next, we have from the city attorney.
No report for me this evening.
Okay, anything from any other staff? Not seeing anything. Okay, I will remind everybody we do not have a work session next week. The next regular meeting of the Mayor and Council will be on Monday, October 2nd. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.